This episode of Enlightened Omnivore is brought to you by Herd and Grace, your trusted source for world-class, responsibly raised meats from Australia, Spain, and beyond. Taste the difference in every cut and get 15% off your first order at herdandgrace.com with code OMNIVORE15. Welcome to Season 2 of Enlightened Omnivore, a show about the delicious intersections of food, travel, and the environment. I'm your host, Steve Sabaker, and over the next 13 weeks, we'll hear from chefs, writers, foragers, and thinkers who are shaping how we eat, cook, and live more consciously. We'll explore everything from wild game to Latin American flavor culture, from the mind-body connection in food to the healing powers of forest bathing, one meal at a time. For our Season 2 premiere, I couldn't think of a better person to kick things off with than my friend, my teacher, a guy who I spent much of the last decade with and who introduced me to butchery, Mr. Michael Puglisi. Michael founded Electric City Butcher, a shop that really helped reintroduce craft butchery to Orange County. Thanks in large part to the support of food journalism celebrity Jonathan Gold, we gained a ton of visibility in a very short period of time. ECB was also where I started my own butchery journey. And for the next 7 years, we worked side by side, building Electric City Butcher and Graze and Gather Meats into community hubs for food sustainability and artisanal integrity. Michael's career has taken him from Thomas Keller's kitchens to working alongside James Beard Award-winning chefs and even the shores of Sicily, where he first found inspiration for what became our shop. Michael's efforts reflect a rare mix of skill, philosophy, and resilience that can only be described in one word: finesse. The delicate refinement of performance and execution of technique. And that used to be written on the walls of our shop. Michael, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome Season 2, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's awesome to have you on. It's a shame it's taken this long, but there is a lot of ground to cover tonight. So you and I have a lot to talk about, but let's start with your story because I think it's a pretty fascinating one. How did you get to butchery in the first place?
Well, first of all, I don't think you and I have ever had a 90-minute conversation, or at least that short. So it will be tough for us to fit it all in, and maybe there's even a part 2 or something else down the line. But my story, I mean, just like anybody else who really cares about hospitality and the food service industry, is passion. I came from upstate New York where there's no food scene at all. Maybe a couple of retired chefs that were just burnt out and opened up a reasonable good place that was considered fine dining at that level in that area. But if you've ever been, which I think you may have been, Saratoga, Albany is really the 2 food destinations in upstate New York. Outside of that, there's not really much. There's probably a little bit more now, but we're talking over 15, almost 20 years ago when I started to dip my toes into the water of the food service world.
And you were calling Schenectady home, right?
Yes. Born and raised in Schenectady. I left there when I was about 27 years old. My wife and I, she's a nurse, I was a cook. We felt like we could take on the world and go anywhere we wanted. So that's exactly what our desires were. We started off, she was working at a hospital in Albany, and I was working at a restaurant in Albany. That's where I think I got the bug, the itch to really see what food was about. I was actually working in the airlines, United Airlines. So in the airline industry, 9/11 hit, and it was tragic. And the airlines just took a nosedive. I thought to myself, there's 2 things that I really like. One was carpentry, and the other one was food service. So I started doing small jobs around my house, doing things with friends for like carpentry and stuff. And then I also got a job at a local supermarket just to learn where food came from. And that's where I really started to gravitate towards how food was prepared. What was the pros and cons of where and how food was grown? I just started to really dive into that. I also really attribute, believe it or not, Iron Chef, the original on Food Network, where it was all the old school Iron Chef guys. And the fact that you could take these raw ingredients with skill and finesse and transform these raw ingredients into stunning plates of food in such a short period of time, that to me was like, holy crap, that's amazing. That's like a superhero for food. And for me, it took me by both hands and took me for the ride, man. I was super excited about everything to do with food. I wanted to learn everything I could, anyhow I could. And I took a couple of classes, culinary classes. I realized food in the school setting was not for me, but learning about food in the real world, hands on, was definitely for me. But I jumped right in, man. I jumped right in, got into restaurants, started to learn. I got some really great chefs that knew I was hungry. They taught me about a lot of stuff. We moved to Boston. I worked for Barbara Lynch there, amazing restaurateur at the time. This was in 2007, I think it was. Spent some time there at her butcher shop, of all places. I had no idea about butchery. I did do some butchery in New York where I was working, like some whole salmon, veal legs, things like that. Very basic, but charcuterie really I started to gravitate towards charcuterie and just salamis and just being able to fabricate things and transform them. Being able to fabricate something from such a raw state of a whole animal, and then all the different things that you can do with it. I got so excited about it, working with Barbara Lynch, whole animal butcher shop, sausage making, terrine making. I had an amazing chef there, Greg Reeves. He really took me under his wing. And he was like, hey, you know what? You love this. I can see you love this. So I'm going to teach you everything I know. And he did that. And I was there for about a year and a half. And then we got tired of the East Coast or the snow.
I could understand that.
At the time, my wife, she was a travel nurse, so we could go anywhere. So we packed our bags and moved to Miami. We went to Miami for a year. I got to work at Fontainebleau during its reopening in mid 2008. And that was amazing because it was 13 restaurants on site. And I was part of the butchery team, butchering for all 13 outlets.
So you're getting some practice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, dude, we were cutting like 1,100 portions of filet mignon a day. It was insane. 3,000 portions of sea bass. Like it was bananas, the amount of fabrication we were doing on a daily.
So you got that repetition, you got in those hours.
Exactly, right? Exactly. You know, you master something, after 10,000 hours. So I definitely probably did that in Miami. But I got to work with a lot of master chefs from France. So Fontainebleau kind of brought these master chefs from France to open the property. And it wasn't just in the butchery department. They had a master chef saucier, they had a master chef patissier, and we got to have exposure to all of them. It was, I mean, a culinary playground of giants that could just show you amazing things. And that was really amazing.
And it really, I mean, butchery, not only was it from the experiences you had in the kitchen, but it's kind of in your DNA too, right? Because butchery runs in your family.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was the thing, right? So when we got out here to the West Coast, that's when I got to work for Thomas Keller. And as soon as I got in there, I got in as their head butcher. I realized that, hey, I've got all of this background, I've got this history, I've got this experience, but I also have this amazing resource that I've never tapped into, which, to your point, is my cousin Salvatore in Sicily. And he was he's one of two butchers in his hometown. Now, where my father's from in Sicily is Fontecchi Fontina, and there's only about 3,000 people. A very small population, common though for small towns like that. But he was one of two butchers, but he was the only butcher that actually raised his animals. So I went there and I spent 5 weeks there with Sal and a few other restaurateurs in the area, watching how they fabricated, how they used just the raw approach and appreciation to all the products, not just the meats, but even their vegetables, everything. I remember my uncle Gino, God rest his soul, but he got up in the middle of pouring rain to go plant beans. And I'm like, why are you planting the beans? He goes, because I need to plant the beans now. And if I don't plant the beans, I don't have beans to pick. It was like they're so committed to a traditional food source without interruption. And that really resonated with me. And then I saw that again within the butcher shop, working with Sal for weeks, where people would come in. There was no display case. There was no meat in a display case in his butcher shop. People would come in, they'd ask Sal, hey, it's 2 of us tonight for dinner or whatever. And he would say, all right, aspetta. He'd walk away. He'd go into the cooler. He'd break off whatever piece he wanted to sell them. And that's what he sold them. And sometimes it wasn't even meat. It was liver. It was heart. It was tripe. It was whatever had to be consumed first. And that whole village was eating those whole animals together. So it was like nobody had a priority over any cut, or they couldn't cut the line. Like, I just want to get some filet mignon, a little setter cut. I'm doing a recipe I saw in Food and Wine magazine. Like, it didn't exist. None of that.
It was kind of like a butchery omakase.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was stunning to see people not question anything. Right now, obviously, fast forward or transport me back into LA in 2010, 2011, Lindy and Grundy was still open. That was a whole animal butcher shop in LA, I think on Fairfax. They were open for a few years, and they were really pushing whole animal. And I was watching what they were doing at that time. At that time, I went back to work back at Bouchon, and I was still there as the butcher.
Yeah, we kind of skipped over that a little bit, but you did get to work with Thomas Keller, and then you were his executive sous chef at Bouchon, right?
Yeah, I was there for 5 years. I was part of the opening team. Amazing staff, amazing setting. But when you go to work in that type of setting, I mean, to give you perspective, Bouchon in Los Angeles is different than the other Bouchons because there was a full-on bakery. Everything was under one roof. So we essentially had about 7 different menus. I had 60 cooks at one point under me. The staff was almost 300 people deep. The restaurant was an entire city block. It was a beast, absolute monster. So you had to go into that setting knowing you were going to get your ass kicked, and you were asking to have your ass kicked because you like you knew the beating was coming. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It was just like it was a challenge as a young cook and someone who wants to learn and grow. There's no better setting because there was never a moment where there wasn't something to learn. There was never a moment that there wasn't something to achieve. And you were surrounded by an amazing cast of super talented chefs, most of them coming from Per Se at that time when I was there.
Which is his restaurant in New York City.
Correct. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that Michelin left the year before the restaurant opened, but all those guys were coming and we were opening Bouchon trying to achieve a Michelin star. And Michelin had just left. So it was like, they didn't care. We're like, we're doing Michelin food anyway. And so we were doing Michelin food without getting the credit for it. And at the same time, cranking out 500 to 600 covers a day or an evening for dinner, just for dinner.
Massive restaurant.
It was insane. I remember, I mean, the skill set that you learn there, the camaraderie. I see people now that were my meat cooks and fish cooks when I was the executive sous chef. You know, the people that were cooking on the line are now chef de cuisines of amazing restaurants around the country. And so it's like that setting breeds a whole nother level of chef. I wouldn't be who I am today without being there and spending the time there. And that's why I went to work there.
So how many years were you at Bouchon again?
5.
And
so
then
2009 to 2014.
And then did you end up taking a break to go to Sicily, or was that like a vacation?
I took some time. I basically compounded a bunch of time off. I got approval from my chef because they encouraged going to places and learn and staging and stuff like that. So, I mean, I stayed a little bit longer just because my wife and I we were like, hey, this is gonna be our last vacation before, having a baby. So we were like, let's go big or go home. And I wanted to learn. I wanted to spend some time. I really wanted the education before becoming a father because I didn't feel like I could do both at that point afterwards. So for me, it was a really big point in my career to go, okay, clearly I'm doing things well. I'm in the place I should be at Bouchon at the time. I've made all the transitions and changes. Now I need to do something for me. I need to do something that I know is 100% for me. And that was the trip to Italy. And I got to work at restaurants with the butchers. And it was just, for me, when I came back was probably the hardest thing was to go, why are we cooking like this? Not that we're cooking bad at Bouchon, because Bouchon's an amazing place, but I'm like, why aren't we using the whole animal? Why aren't we taking the time to do this? Why? I'm like, and because I was just so stuck in that awe of appreciation of what was going on in Sicily. I'm like, why can't we do this? Why can't this be done here? And I mean, I found out why it couldn't be done, because you can't serve 600 covers a night with, just a couple of beans and one tenderloin. So, it's like, the math wouldn't work. Right. But that kind of set me on my path where I knew I wanted to end up.
Yeah, and so that kind of planted the seed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that suddenly the vision for what could be turned into Electric City Butcher.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I stayed at Bouchon for another 3 years after that, but that was strategic. I climbed the ranks. I became second in command. And that's when I was like, okay, I've done everything I can do here. I've learned everything I can learn here. And I don't want to be the chef de cuisine of this gigantic restaurant. So it's time to go, kind of thing. And I remember it was probably one of the most, um, confusing moments of my life, where I'm literally had an exit interview with Chef Thomas. And I remember he took his phone out of his pocket, turned it off, and then put it in his bag, and then turned his chair toward me, open armed, like, talk to me. And I'm like, I had never had an exit interview before, had no
Yeah.
idea what was going on. And he just wanted to know what I was interested in, what I was doing, where I wanted to go, how he could help, and all these amazing things. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, why am I leaving this company? I mean, at that time, I had a job offer at all of his restaurants. I went and staged at different places. So I'm like, why am I leaving? But then I remember, I'm like, because my goal is different. I wanted to build Electric City Butcher, but I didn't know it was Electric City Butcher at that time. I just knew I wanted to do something more directly connected from our food to the people eating it. And that was really all I knew. And I knew I couldn't do it there. And I knew I had to do it on my terms. And I knew I had to figure out what that was.
And then
So,
you made the plunge and you jumped into small business and started.
yeah, well, I left Bouchon without a job. And I was like, just like, hey, I need to figure this out. This is important to me. I could always go back. I could always go back and work for Chef Thomas. Like, I'm not burning any bridges. Like, I need to go explore this. I need to go figure this out. And I started to consult. I started diving into a couple different like projects, but nothing I was really kind of connected to. I had worked with Anya Fernan, who used to be with Belcampo. We had a mutual friend that introduced us, and she had an Eat Real festival where they did like butchery competitions. And so I started getting into like, I was like, oh, I know how to butcher. I can do whatever. So I kind of became like this gunslinger, like butcher for a little while, where I was just like doing these little pop-ups. I did some classes. I still think one of them's on YouTube, but it was private dinners with butchery added to it. And I just started using my butchery skills to get comfortable and just kind of like make a little money. And then finally I was posed with the opportunity to open something. And that's when it kind of clicked. I was like, oh, I'm like, well, this is what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting to do something small enough, not, kind of not risk free, but low level risk, and see what I can build. And that's when Electric City Butcher was kind of created. And there was a guy, Dan Cox, who was a PR agent, introduced me to Eddie Ruiz. And Eddie was opening a restaurant in Pasadena, and it was going to be sausage and meat focused. And he was like, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. So he had asked Dan, hey, do you know anybody who can come and help me open this thing? So Dan knew somebody that I knew who was part of our consulting team. They're like, hey, they need somebody who knows how to make sausage and stuff. So I was like, what the hell? I was like, let me go see what it's about. So Eddie and I ended up partnering on his project in Pasadena. And I was making all the sausage, and I was doing all of his meat fabrication, doing it on the side, right? I wasn't
Sure.
part of his payroll. And I was like, well, he was like, I don't want to hire you. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I gotta sell my services. So I didn't sell him product. We just came in as, nighttime meat slinger. And, but I needed to brand it, right? I needed to have an LLC. I need to have everything. And I found out that he was doing these things with Yelp. And then Jonathan Gold was part of his camp. And I'm like, well, wait, I can't miss out on these opportunities. So I immediately went to work on building the brand. And I knew I wanted the brand to represent where I'm from, and I wanted it to represent part of me, because I knew whatever I was going to build, it was going to be my DNA. It was going to be based on this idea of sharing hospitality with people and committing to services. And that's where Electric City Butcher was born, was actually through the picnic project with Eddie Ruiz. And there was no brick and mortar. And that started just a few months after I left Bouchon. And I had no idea that was going to happen. I got a really quick loan for like $10,000 to go buy equipment, sausage stuffer, grinder, things like that. Because I was like, I need all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were cranking, man. Jonathan Gold came in and gave us a rave review and talked about the sausages. And like, I never had anything like this before, blah, 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 all these other things. And I was like, holy crap, we just got to write up. And then LA Times, we did an article in the LA Times about going from chef to butcher, I was very blessed for that. And we just started hitting the ground running, man, because we were like, people started calling and asking, like emails and stuff like that. We're like, all right, we had a Facebook store at the time.
Yeah, you didn't even have a shop yet. I mean,
yeah, no shop.
You were just making all of this in the kitchen at a picnic?
Yeah, overnight, because there was no air
conditioning. So you were basically like the graveyard shift.
Yeah, there was no air conditioning in this place.
Yeah. And
you know how to make sausage. Yes. You can't make sausage in a warm environment.
No, you do not want a warm environment making sausage.
Oh yeah,
it was to work quick. You had to work quick.
It was brutal. It was brutal.
So then the brick and mortar came, and then it was a few more months, and then that's when I showed up on your doorstep. I think you guys had maybe been open 6 months.
What year? I got to be honest. What year? We opened our Facebook store in 2014 because we were taking orders and like doing drop-offs. People were asking about it because Jonathan Gold wrote about it, and then we didn't open the store, the brick and mortar, until February 2015.
And so it was actually, I'm looking at the Facebook message right now that it was September 29th, 2015 that I wrote you guys.
So 6 months.
Yeah, because basically I had just gone through my own little midlife crisis or third of a life crisis. And I was like, I really want to change careers. And I think I need to get into food or something with my hands. For the last 15 years, I had been working in communications and PR and in the healthcare industry. And I remember sitting at a table with a bunch of friends after several bottles of wine. And we were just kind of throwing ideas out. Like I was standing up and everybody was like, chef, park ranger, let's see, zookeeper, it was like, what would stick?
Yeah.
And one of my good friends said butcher. And I was like, that checked a bunch of boxes for me in the moment. And so I went and took a class.
I remember. You were Heart and Trotter, right?
I went to Heart and Trotter. I saw James down there, a shop that is no longer there. You'll start to hear the pattern here of the history of a lot of butcher shops in the area. But I went there and I took a class. And at the end of the class, I was nervous. I think I used the saw once and kind of stood in the back. And then I came up to him. I said, hey, do you guys ever do like apprenticeships or trainings? And he's like, well, where do you live? And I was like, well, I live up in LA County. And he's like, why are you coming all the way down here? There's a really good shop just up where you are. And I was like, where? And sure enough, there was one in Orange County called Electric City Butcher.
Yeah, we didn't have any marketing budget then.
Yeah, well, I only found you on Facebook and I wrote you a message. And I remember waiting. It was probably 2 days and it was not very long, but for me, it felt like a long time. And I was about to head down and you responded back. And I think I even have it here. What did you say? It wasn't a very long message, but it was like,
what do you want?
And you're in, Steve. When can you start? Like, oh shit. Okay. So I remember coming down and staging for you guys. I was like 38 years old. I think the next oldest guy working for you was, 24.
Yeah.
And I was sitting next to him. And of course he had 5 or 6 years more experience than I had.
Sure.
and I'm trying to catch up. And I mean, it was so impressive coming to Electric City Butcher for the first time because I had no professional culinary background. I mean, I knew a lot about cooking, and I had done a lot of cooking myself for for my family. But as you know, that's a very different thing than working
Yeah.
in the kitchen. So in that first day, I remember it was like drinking from a fire hose because not only, I mean, I didn't do any butchery. I think I basically I think I picked thyme and chopped onions
Yeah.
maybe, and did a lot of dishes, but I got to watch what you guys did. And of course it was this, if you ever had the chance to come and visit us at Electric City Butcher, it's a single room shop,
Yeah.
and there's no place to hide. I mean, the
None.
3 sink dishwasher is like right there in the middle of
Yep.
everything. So you
Yeah.
got to keep that place clean and tight. And
Yep.
then the walk-in even has a gigantic window. So you could see, wherever you were, Michael had his eyes on you.
Yeah.
And so if I was doing anything wrong, I think you like to wait a little while to let me continue to flounder until you're
I
like,
always give
all
people a
right.
little bit time. Maybe they're gonna recover. You want to see how they deal with the pressure.
But I mean, to go into that environment after having been at Heart and Trotter, and then I was at Pomona Food Locker with Tony, which was a much more traditional, old school butcher shop. I mean,
I
much
remember that
more,
place.
yeah, much more processing than it was retail.
Yeah.
And I mean, the stuff we were doing there compared to what we were doing at ECB, it was like there was no comparison. I mean,
Yeah.
that was like using a sledgehammer to make food versus you guys were using scalpels, and it
Yeah.
was just a completely different experience. You
That was
you
the
could,
intention. That was the intention.
right, and I think the vision of having that Michelin level approach to cuisine, and then this passion for the whole animal experience and trying to connect those two things is an impossible task when you think
Yeah.
about it. But I think we got really close. I mean, it certainly it affected me so much that I gave up on an incredibly lucrative business that I was doing in communications and said, I want to dedicate my life to this.
Yeah.
And the next 7 years was pretty amazing.
What you were saying about what we were doing versus what other people were doing. Yes, we were all doing butchery, but the way we were doing it was so different than how anybody else was doing it because of our culinary background. So our approach was so different. And to your point, people were like, they didn't understand what we were doing sometimes. People would ask, like, do you even carry ground beef? Kind of thing. And so we ended up having an apprenticeship program because we had so many people, even prior to you, asking about, like, how do you teach this? Like, what? And we had 2 other apprentices before you, one of which is actually a food writer for KCRW, Good Food, Elena Shatlin. She
Yep.
was one of our first, and it was hilarious because she was amazing. But she didn't even know how to sweep a floor. So
Right.
how do you take somebody who's genuinely interested in something, who genuinely wants to learn, but has zero skill set and even the basics of something that can be super dangerous, right? And challenging. So not even just dangerous, but challenging mentally and physically. So that apprentice program, it was 10 weeks. You got to give yourself some credit here. It was a 10-week program, and you had to work 2 days in a row,
Oh yeah,
back to back,
I
open to
remember.
close. So it was 10-hour day. You did 20 hours a week in an apprenticeship program with us. And that was on purpose, right? Because it was like, if we're going to take the time to show you what we're doing so you can learn and be educated, then we need your commitment because there's nothing that we can get done in one day.
Totally.
Everything has a process: sausage making, pate, terrines, butchery, portioning, packaging, all of those things. Very few of those things actually are fully complete in just one shift.
I
Everybody,
mean,
yeah,
where I had apprenticed before, or at least worked, a few days before, the old school way was, oh, you're going to wrap all the meat for
yeah,
6 months until you've got wrapping meat down perfectly. And then maybe you could get to grinding meat. And then maybe you could get to sausages. And
Yeah.
then maybe finally, after that's like, so 18 months later, maybe we're going to give you a knife to
Yeah.
actually break down a chicken. And it's like, well, when do I get to do all that beef or that pork over there? Like,
Yeah.
I want to, the stuff
Yeah.
hanging on the hooks. That's what
Someday.
who wants to do a damn chicken, right? But
Yeah.
that time period, and I mean, quite honestly, that was realistic too. I mean, to take that much time to master those skills, and in the olden days, when you're committing to a career,
Yeah.
it makes sense. But that was like how Tony
Yeah.
at the food locker was going to teach me butchery, and I actually gave it a go for a few days. But by the end of day 4, I realized I'm never going to be able. Well, one, I'm never going to be able to feed a family of 5 wrapping meat. But 2, I'm never going to learn anything at this rate.
Right.
And so you guys were really wonderful to say, look, okay, yeah, you can come in and do this for 10 weeks, but you've got to be here 2 days in a row so that you can finish your projects, because
Yes.
you're only going to start a project and
Yep.
never see where it goes.
Yep.
And that was such a great idea.
Well, and that's been everything that I've been a part of. That's one of the biggest things that I learned, especially working at Bouchon, was mentorship. If you can show somebody that you care about showing them something and teaching them something just as much as they care about learning, and you can meet in that level, you can get so much more accomplished, and it feels good. Like, I love teaching. I mean, you know this. I mean, I've counted. I have taught well over 100 butchery classes in my career, and it's so satisfying because the people that are there want to learn, right? So the apprentice program, like, I'm not going to teach you everything, but I'm going to teach you something, and you're going to walk away feeling fulfilled. And, you were probably one of the most successful, obviously, because you were so into that learning. You really wanted to get something out of it, where a lot of other people were there just like, oh, I just want to try it out.
Sure. Well, and it's, I mean, the age gap too. I mean, when you're
Sure.
38 or whatever I was when I started, I was not, I wanted to get the most out of it because I didn't have any more time to screw around.
Sure.
And it was after, I mean, I left after 10 weeks, which, unfortunately I had to go and, make money in other places to kind of feed my family, but I couldn't get that experience out of my head. It was such a powerful and fulfilling 10 weeks. And I worked, like you said, like a dog, no harder than anybody else in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, we all did the same work. We all did the same work, myself included.
Everyone was scrubbing the floor at the end of the night.
Floors, man.
Everybody was doing the dishes. Everybody was picking the beef fat out of the corners. And then after that, I left and I actually went to go teach at USC for a little while, which was, that's a whole nother story. And I couldn't get it out of my head. I kept thinking about coming back to the shop. And when I came back, when we finally figured out, okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to come work, that's when the yakitori started taking off. And suddenly you guys were doing this, like, it was a after hours yakitori bar where basically we'd shut down the butcher shop, and then without a permit, we'd somehow convinced everybody that we could do a live binchotan charcoal fire right up against the walls of the building, and then create a line that sometimes was 40 or 50 people deep waiting for their yakitori skewers.
It was intense.
It was amazing. And I mean, I had never worked in a restaurant once when I was 16. And I survived. I lasted 2 days as a server at a Lions, which is like a Denny's. But this, suddenly I'm in the middle of, calling out orders, and yes, chef, heard, and things are flying, and people are bringing over hot embers, and dollar bills are changing hands, and there's like 20 different orders and sticky tabs and things. I mean, it was insane, and it was so much fun. But that, I think, really is what put ECB on the map. I mean, up until that point, everybody in the neighborhood knew that there was a butcher shop. But suddenly we were getting visibility. That whole area was blowing up from a culinary perspective, and we were getting visibility from all over, from the LA Times. Jonathan Gold talked about our yakitori. these celebrity chefs that wanted to see what was going on in this little
Yeah.
butcher shop. It really picked up, and I feel like there was lightning in the bottle at that moment.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and that was, I mean, one of the best years of my life, I think. And now a minute to hear from our sponsor. Enlightened Omnivore is brought to you by Herd and Grace. Herd and Grace is a trusted source for world-class meats, providing premium beef and lamb from Australia and Iberico pork from Spain. Herd and Grace connects their guests with the finest farms and producers from around the world. Herd and Grace is passionate about delicious meats, where it comes from, and the people who raise it too. By working with a range of world-class farmers, they are able to offer an unmatched selection of over 70 different cuts. It's all about giving you the opportunity to explore and enjoy exceptional quality from a variety of sources. If you're looking for an unforgettable holiday gift, Herd and Grace has you covered. Choose from curated bundles featuring everything from 100% grass-fed to full-blood Wagyu cuts. Whether you're shopping for the foodie in your life or hosting a special dinner, it's a gift that's sure to impress. Check it out at herdandgrace.com and get 15% off your first order when you use the code Omnivore15. Now, back to the show.
It was 2017 to 2019 was explosive.
I think every business has its genesis moment or its tipping point, and those first several years of working together where every day was an adventure and I was learning something new and we were getting exposure and you were learning new things. I mean, we were really becoming a team.
Never ran a business before.
Yeah. And then of course I joined the business, and then we got, we ended up taking on new roles.
Yep.
And then we expanded, expanded to Graze and Gather here in Claremont.
But even before that, our whole wholesale department.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, you're right.
I mean, there was 4 or 5 different growth spurts over the course of 9 years, and each one had its own moment and how the community interacted and how that garnered different attention. And it's like, I look back on some of that stuff, I'm like, oh my, like you just bring up the yakitori. I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about yakitori. How can I forget about yakitori? It was the most fun and the biggest pain in the ass.
When you and Richard Liu was also a founding member of ECB, incredibly important to the organization. One of the most beautiful people that I've ever met. He's a fantastic guy. He and you would design the menu for yakitori, and it would get complicated and more complicated. We had spritzers of yuzu, I mean, it was like, what the hell are we doing? This is yakitori. It's like supposed to be the
That's where the burger got discovered too.
Yeah, that's right.
Watermelon.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there was so many elements. We made everything harder and harder, but still there was so much passion in it. Yeah. And it was really, really intoxicating, like for us and for the guests.
Where were you going to get Bichotan grilled watermelon with house-made lardo and chicharrones and shiso? I mean,
it was delicious. It was
you
delicious.
Want to eat that? You want to eat that?
Yeah, but absolutely. Why aren't we doing that on the weekends now? I don't know.
We should.
But it was a beautiful time. It was an amazing period in both of our lives. And then COVID happened, and the entire supply chain went sideways. And initially we had more demand than we knew what to do with. Yeah. But it kept getting harder and harder to do our jobs, whether that was shutting the shop down to keep it safe for the employees and only letting 1 or 2 customers in at a time, or it was trying to find new suppliers, new ranchers and farmers who were willing to work with us because the market was changing and the processing was changing. And then the big meat businesses started to really buy up a lot of the suppliers or move them out of business. And so there were so many things working against us.
Tons.
You and I poured so much into that business, and the whole team did. I mean, there were dozens of people that came and went through ECB's doors that all added fantastic personality and skill and hard work.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like for you though at the end? I mean, as you could see that things were starting to kind of unravel that were out of our control.
I mean, I was tired, to be honest. I mean, when you're doing something and you're building something and you're a part of something, it takes a lot out of you. I mean, a lot. And, I think for me, it was one of those things where I had to take a second and go, what are we doing? What do I want to do versus what are we doing? And what can we do? And for me, it was the whole purpose of what Electric City Butcher was founded on was accomplished. I accomplished what we wanted to do. We wanted to make an impact and change the way people thought and engaged with their meats on a local level. That was the whole premise of why Electric City Butcher started. And I had to take a deeper look. Our wholesale was growing. We were doing all these great things. I mean, people were now eating differently. They were sourcing differently. Our meats were being served Taco Maria and all kinds of wonderful places. I mean, our meats were on Michelin restaurants.
Yeah.
We physically changed the way people were eating meat in Southern California. We were acknowledged nationwide. We created something from nothing based on just trying to do something better for the community. So towards the end of making this decision to shut it down, it was hard, but it also felt okay. It felt like, hey, I did what I wanted to do. And what I want to do now is not this. And that's okay. And when I have conversations like this, or when I talk to people like, oh yeah, you had Electric City Butcher. Oh man, that place was amazing. What happened? It's like, it's not about what happened. It's about where was I? Where were we? Right? Like, I truly believe I got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
I got a lot out of what I wanted. Right? Can you do things different? Always. Hindsight's always 2020. That goes without saying. There's no even reason to have that conversation. But I do feel like we did exactly that. Look at where some of our old team members are. Our old team members are carrying through doing the same thing that we were doing and creating the next level of food preparation, community-driven experiences, and building on what they started with us. When they came to us, they had none of that. Like,
Yeah,
we did
absolutely.
exactly what Thomas Keller was doing when I was working with him. And like, you're building people and you're making the network of value more and more in the community. Was it heartbreaking? Yeah. Was it difficult? Yeah. But it was the right thing at the right time, considering what we were up against and what we were going through. Not just personal, but in the business and everything, right? It's just one of those things where it's like, hey, I would rather choose than not to have a choice.
Absolutely. Did stepping away change your relationship with the craft? I mean, did you feel like after closing the doors, did you want to take some time away from butchery?
Well, I mean, part of my priority was shifting before shutting. I mean, I needed more. I needed to be with my family more, a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, your kids were
And
getting bigger.
yeah, yeah. And I also needed time. I needed time with myself. There was if you I always said to people, if you break it down, right, and you've got it even, more so, where it's like, if you break it down into fractions, right, there's me, there's my wife, there's my two kids, there's my business, right? So at most I get 25% of my own time, right? And then your job, right? So at most I'm getting, 18 to 16% of my own time.
Yeah.
It's not a lot, right? And for me, it became really apparent that I needed to take a step back to identify what was important to me. Butchery has always been important to me and always will be important to me. I created a personality. I created a whole nother person within myself with Electric City Butcher. I'm known for that, and it has become part of my DNA. But my relationship has changed with Butchery, because when we closed DCB 6 months later, then we closed Graze and Gather. So it was a transition. It was like, oh, okay, I don't have to be as crazy in the butchery world, because ECB was much more demanding than Graze and Gather. And it was a relief going to let ECB go and focus on Graze and Gather, even though we already knew what was going to be happening down the line. But I was able to kind of like settle, and I was kind of able to enjoy it a little bit again, because I wasn't enjoying Butchery. I was barely even butchering at ECB.
Yeah. Yeah. By
Towards
the end there. Yeah.
I mean, when in the middle of COVID, yeah, because there was no staff, or, we had to break up the staff, which was super smart, which I remember when you imposed like doing, hey, we should do an A and B crew. And it was like the most brilliant thing, because we could still operate and not have issues, it wasn't, so it was, I missed Butchery. I wasn't butchering. And then I got to do some more of that at Graze and Gather. But then when we closed that, for me, it was like, is this really what I'm going to do for the rest of my life?
Mm.
And if so, how am I going to do that? Right. So I took a break. I took about 6 months off, and I got an office job for a little bit.
I remember that.
It was the most ridiculous thing. I was like, what am I doing? This is stupid. It was good money, but I was like, I just needed a break. I needed to do something where I didn't have to think, right? I needed something where I could create some balance. Then I started helping out a buddy who is a processor, and we were breaking down 2 cows a day by hand. I was like, dude, what are we doing? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is so
backbreaking work, right?
Oh, backbreaking, super inefficient. I'm just like, all right, if I'm gonna stay in the meat world, like, I need to do something where I know I can build and I can make an impact, and I can maybe do some of the things that I've always wanted to do with ECB. And so my relationship with Butchery, specifically physically, has definitely stepped down, but still operating, still a butcher at heart, still deal with meat every day, and I love it. And I don't think I'm going to ever step away from it.
Well, and I think one other thing that I loved about that transition time for you was that you leaned back into woodworking.
Oh, yeah.
You got super passionate again about another craft that you love, that's working with your hands, and that you didn't have to make a living out of.
Yep.
That you can do it for fun.
Yes.
And it's been great to see you really lean into that and continue. Yeah. Now I guess you're working on a house remodel, right? So even when you're
I'm doing the remodel myself. So, it takes 3 months to do a closet.
But I think that's so healthy as we go through that mourning process of anything. And it really was for me. I mean, I probably practically or logically came to the conclusion, there was a spreadsheet that was telling me what the future had in store. But when I finally said goodbye, I mean, I remember the last day we were in ECB when we took all the equipment out and it was empty.
Yeah.
And the only thing still left in there was that finesse definition stenciled on the ceiling. And I was like, wow, this is heavy, but it's also the right decision.
Yeah.
And then I leaned into some of my other passions too. I mean, that's when I started writing, and it was so essential to me to take up something that I had loved my whole life, but had never given myself the time to do. And so, it's like Phoenix from the ashes, or, you kind of rebirth when you have to go through a death to kind of see the next opportunity. And I'm excited for you as you get into the next chapter of life. So what are you up to now?
I'm just hanging out. My home dad. No.
Still in the basement playing video games?
I wish. Oh yeah, I did that. I took that time. I think that's what I was mourning that loss, I mean, none of it hit me for a while, and I still think it hits me incrementally, like over time, you talk to somebody and things like that. But I mean, I ended up finding something I wish, no offense to ECB or anything that we did together. I wish I had found the Think Culinary team that I'm on now years ago, because they were in a building time and still are. But it's very vibrant, and it's all meat driven. So I'm still in the meat business. I operate the food service department and the direct to consumer department for Think Culinary. Think Culinary is a master importer located here in Los Angeles. And We basically import some of the best beef in all of Australia into the United States, and then we distribute it to distributors. So we only sell to distributors. And we opened 2 years ago. I came on board middle of December 2023, I think it was, and opened up Herd and Grace. So Herd and Grace is the direct to consumer brand that was launched for Think Culinary. So it's a way for people who are already eating our meats and don't even know it, able to get those meats direct. So we sell to distributors who sell to places like Cut, Spago, Cato, Budinoki, which is one of the top restaurants in the country and in LA. Like, they're already using our meats, but you don't see it. So Herd and Grace is the opportunity to buy these items direct. So it's direct to consumer, all the imported meats that we have. So I run that department. We cut and process everything here in Los Angeles, and then we ship it nationwide. We have a fulfillment store in West LA that's open 7 days a week, and we do classes, we do barbecues, we do all kinds of fun, engaging things that we used to do at ECB. So everything I was doing at ECB and building that, I'm able to still do all of that fulfilling stuff through Herd and Grace, and also develop value add stuff things that you and I talked about for years. We're debuting sausages now. I'm getting burgers made. We just had 10,000 pounds of burgers made that are going to start getting delivered to places that could possibly be like Disney. So it's unbelievable. I'm getting to do a lot of those bigger projects that I always wanted to do with ECB under the Think Culinary brand. So I'm building again. I'm building another meat business essentially.
There you go. It's you can't well, you can take the butcher out of the butcher shop, but you can't take the butcher shop out of the butcher. Is that
pretty much? Yeah.
A lot has changed since we were selling meat together. I mean, in the last even 2 years, a lot has changed. What do you think today's consumers misunderstand the most about the meat industry right now?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think they misunderstand claims the most. And I'm not gonna go through every single claim and try to defend or define them. But I think claims are very difficult to sift through. And I think we experienced it years ago during that boom of 2017 and 19, even maybe 16 to 19, where people were willing to do the homework. They were willing to find the source. And that's why we were growing so quickly at that time, because they knew they could trust us. There was no BS with us. We were the transparent conduit to the source. We did all the homework for you. And that's why we claimed responsible sourcing, right? We didn't claim anything outside of that. And it was because we're doing everything that we feel is the most responsible way to source proteins. And I think there's so many different claims. I think it's really difficult for people. And I think people stopped caring about claims, and they care more about bang for their buck. The market is flooded with inexpensive Wagyu, and has been for 2 or 3 years now. And we saw that during our last few years. We couldn't keep Wagyu in the case. We brought in one Wagyu SKU, and it was the biggest, most popular item that we had, and we couldn't keep up with it. And people want bang for their buck. And I think that's the biggest thing that's happened since COVID, is people want to know how much value they're getting for their dollar more than how much quality they're getting for their dollar.
And that's a good distinction, because I mean, when you're talking about value, what do you mean by that? Do you mean flavor? Do you mean pounds? What are we talking? Size, volume, flavor?
I'm talking about size and experience.
Yeah.
Size and experience, right? So size, the amount that you're getting, the volume that you're getting, right? And experience, where flavor profile and tenderness. And I think Wagyu has disrupted that, because there has been such a large volume of inexpensive Wagyu available for the past couple of years. And I think you can get Wagyu at Costco now. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
you can get Wagyu all over the place now. The market is flooded with it. So people are either buying for health because they want grass fed, grass finished specifically because that's either what their doctor told them, what they think they should have, what they know they want, right? Or they want bang for their buck. And I really truly feel like there isn't much in between. Um, we sell 9 different farms at Herding Grace, and there's 2 that are the most popular out of those 9, head and shoulders above the rest. And it's grass fed and it's F1 Wagyu. So it's grass fed, grass finished because of the benefits of what it is, and the F1 Wagyu because it's the best bang for your buck. Those 2 items, head and shoulders above the rest of everything else we sell, hands down. And I wouldn't be able to talk about this if I wasn't in a setting that I am now, because when we were operating, we sold 1 item,
Right.
California grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and that was it, right? So we truly didn't know what people were interested in because we didn't give people an opportunity within our own store to discover or explore different things. So I do feel confident that where I am now, I'm able to really see a difference in the market. Whereas before, I couldn't speak on that because we didn't know. We had no
Well,
idea.
we were intentionally shrinking the market. We were really
Yes,
selling
100%.
a vision for the future.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
what is that next trend in the industry? I mean, what are you seeing consumers really interested in? I'd say Wagyu, we were on the tip of that spear. We saw what happened there. Beef tallow, like everything seems to be fried or cooked in beef tallow right now. Bone broth was another trend that we were part of. What's the next one in the meat industry that you guys are seeing?
Man, it's interesting because tariffs have affected availability. It has really changed a lot of things, right? So there's not an excessive amount of product available in every category. So local, domestic, I think is the biggest thing that everybody is trying to find now. And something that we would like to do is find a domestic product and work with a domestic supplier that can provide us what we need as far as volume goes. Because in hitting the criteria of being, regenerative, being responsible, having good quality sourcing and farming practices at a volume that we need. And that's one of the tough things for us is, we could go and get, Creekstone, we could go and get whatever, but everything that we offer is very unique, just like how we did at ECB. Like you couldn't go get Stemple Creek Ranch anywhere. You can get it online, pay a premium, or you can come to us, basically. And that's the same kind of idea with Herding Grace is you can't just go get our sourcing anywhere. But I do think domestic is where people are trying to go now, for beef specifically, because the pricing issues there right now with the costs.
Well, and that encourages me because I mean, where I stand on this. I have had lots of great product from all over the world. I mean, I've eaten all over the world. And Australia has great grass finished beef. It's shocking to me still, even though I understand why, but the fact that it can be cost competitive with American product. But I'm encouraged to hear that you're looking domestically because with all of the pressure on the industry, a lot of our ranching friends, had to go more niche or had to go, direct to consumer.
Yeah.
Because with COVID and otherwise, there was no way to get that margin that they needed to keep the ranches alive.
Shipping and processing.
Yeah. And I mean, none of our ranching friends were like, oh, I can't wait to launch this website. I can't wait to do this, this TikTok video. They want to raise the animals and they want to maintain the soil and they want to, get back out on the land and be on the land. They don't want to be on their phones or behind a computer screen. So I'm encouraged by that, but I'm not really seeing that in the marketplace yet. Where do you think that there's space for those smaller producers that can meet your demands? I mean, what isn't processing the big bottleneck?
So processing is not the bottleneck obviously outside of the US, but locally it is. You know,
Yeah,
domestically it is with
yeah.
USDA cutbacks and shutdowns, all that. Absolutely. So that's the challenge, right? And not only that, but a lot of our beef here, it's seasonal. It's so seasonal here. We don't have the climate to have consistent, really well matured beef all year round without introducing something, right? Whether it be changing the environment or the feed or whatever they need to do, but that's the one thing that I think is difficult for a lot of domestic ranchers is being able to have a very natural regenerative product that's consistent all year round. And that's what American eaters are so used to, right? I mean, that's why the corn and soy supplement and all these beefs are what everyone's used to. They're used to commercial beef because it's all tastes the same, right? Because it's designed. It's like a McDonald's burger, right? It's scientifically engineered to be exact.
Consistency.
Yeah, and you're not going to get that with natural farming.
I was just talking to somebody about this. We've somehow brainwashed American consumers to think that consistency is more important than quality.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind because I was just talking to a hunter about this, where he says, "Oh, you can hunt deer, in different areas or at different parts of the season, and based on where they're at and what they're eating on, you're going to get a different deer every time." And so,
Yeah.
to write a cookbook about wild game, it's, I think he called it controlled chaos, because it's like there's so many variables, but that's exciting. And I think in European cooking, at least, or I would say in France with, my family there, that's exciting when the onions that you pull out of the ground, along the roadside, or the wild asparagus, or the fruits off the trees, they have different flavors at different times of the year. And that adds to the fun of it. That adds to the story and the narrative. Whereas we are really, really infatuated with consistency. I want to eat the same thing every Monday, at this restaurant. Or now, like, with Cisco, like any restaurant you go to in America, basically you're going to get the same thing because they're getting it sourced from the same distributor.
Yeah.
So if you could change one thing about how Americans think about meat, what would it be?
Well, does it have to be one thing? Time two?
Well, we got a couple more minutes, but
Okay.
yeah.
So the one thing, right, is exactly what you were just talking about, which was exactly part of the ethos of Electric City Butcher, right? It was just like no two steaks are going to be the same, and that's intentional, and that's okay, and that's part of what we're doing and why, right? So I do still fully believe that type of consumption is one of the things that we could do as a society that would benefit every farmer, whether it's beef or tomatoes, right? Is like just eat the food that naturally is growing when it is and deal with it how it is, right? We live in California. I get tomatoes in December. You know what I mean? Like those go into my tomato sauce. The tomatoes I get in August, they go on a plate. You know what I mean? It's like, to your point, just in France, it's like, hey, things are going to grow, right? Beefs are going to change. Maybe I'm stewing most of my beef instead of cooking it mid-rare, right? Like different parts of the season. So I do think that is one thing that if American consumers could really just accept that, we would have so much less food loss and waste, and it would reduce pricing because we would have more product in the market and people would be able to eat more of it. Because instead of just having, ribeye 5 nights a week, maybe eating ribeye, then eating some lamb, then eating some stew meat, you know what I mean? Like mixing it up a little bit, and like not having the same thing all the time, because that puts too much pressure on the food systems.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, actually, the fact that you brought up that food waste is a huge byproduct of this issue of consistency. I mean, not only in the meat industry, but how many tomatoes that don't meet the requirements
Yeah.
of Walmart or the major grocery
Yeah.
stores get
Oh, yeah.
relegated to the compost bin when they're perfectly good. They
Yeah.
just don't, they're not the right size, or maybe
Yeah.
they're not the right firmness, or maybe they're too ripe to go in the truck that's got to then go to the grocery store.
Sure.
So that consistency is not only, challenging us in industries where we're trying to make change, but it's actually incredibly unsustainable in the markets that already exist because of that willingness to throw things away that don't fit the mold.
And that was going to be, I mean, besides eating more lamb, which I think everybody should eat more lamb, because not just because I love lamb, but lamb is super nutrient dense. It's much easier to farm than it is to farm cows, right? There's a lot of benefits there.
They can eat almost anything too. Well,
Yeah.
they can certainly climb in the hills a lot more, and
Yeah.
it adds to the flavor profile. But you don't have to convince me of that. You know my obsession with lamb.
But I do think the food waste is the other thing. I mean, eating more lamb as a whole instead of beef, I think can be a great supplement, and just eating a rotation. I mean, I have meat at my disposal all the time. I've had the luxury of eating good quality meat for the past 12 years of my life, if not more. And I still don't eat meat every day. I don't eat meat every day. I eat it maybe only a couple times a week, and I have a chest freezer full all the time. We need to be balanced. We need to not be wasteful. Those are the things that really, I think, if people in general knew what it took, or actually had to do it themselves, then I think we would really shift the way we eat and waste.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So when you're not eating meat, what are you eating? Tell us, what are you cooking these days in your kitchen that isn't a protein?
No, it's funny. So my wife and I were very late to the game because we both worked through COVID. But we've been making a lot of bread. We make bread 2 to 3 times a week. And it's amazing because it's sourdough, right? So it got some good gut health. It's got great flavor and texture, but not having to go to the store and buy some of what would be considered the essentials. There's a lot of pleasure in that. And quite frankly, as I've gotten older too, I also find myself only eating like 2 meals a day. So I eat like 10 or 11 o'clock, and then again at dinner. So my consumption overall has been low, but when I do eat and when I'm cooking, it's usually things my girls want. And it's less about what I'm cooking and more about how I'm cooking. So both my girls, we cook every meal together now. Not every meal every day, but every time I'm cooking, it's like
They're helping you out.
I honestly, Steve, I don't even pay attention to what I'm cooking. I'm just teaching them how to cook. Just teaching them how to cut, how to scoop, how to clean up, how to saute, how to not burn yourself, right? These, my oldest, I'm teaching her how to use the smoker, and so we're just cooking whatever we have in the house. And there's honestly no meal plan. It's, but outside of bread is probably the only thing we've really been focusing on. And tomato sauce has been a passion of mine for the past 2 months.
Season. Is that season?
Yeah.
And how are the eggs coming in? How are the chickens doing?
Yeah, well, 2 are producing. 1 might be soup. We'll see what happens.
I've been there a few times.
Yeah.
We just got a new bunch, and
we're about to. Good.
And like 2 days ago, got our first pullet eggs. So I've got
nice.
little tiny eggs.
Oh, wow.
But now, we'll be getting 2 to 4 eggs a day, hopefully.
Yeah. So. No, it's like, and I think like, what am I eating outside of meat? It's like, man, go to the farmer's market on Sunday, whatever they got going on. I love Weiser Family Farms. They're always one of my favorites. Melons all summer have been amazing. I really just try to stay seasonal, really just support farmers. So it's nothing specific other than some tomato sauce, because I'm just trying to come up with a new recipe, and bread and whatever's in the coffers.
It's all about the seasons, man. This just keeps coming back to me. I mean, every time I think about how to make my life more balanced and more harmonious, it's just like listen to the seasons and lean into them. Yeah. Do you have a favorite season?
Favorite season? Yeah, I think spring is probably my favorite, not just for all the spring vegetables, but I really love the chill in the morning, and then the warm day, and then the chill at night. I mean, it reminds me of the East Coast a lot. I talk about how much I miss the East Coast and the seasons, but I still haven't, moved back. So
winter's a little tougher there than.
Yeah, I have no interest in the snow. I like seeing it up on the mountains, and I can go to it if I want to.
Well, man, it has been amazing to reconnect. You and I can get together once in a while, but it's still fun to be able to share our stories and to look back on everything we built and learned along the way. Your story reminds me that food is never just about what's on the plate. It's about craft. It's about respect. It's about the community, right?
Big time.
So thank you for helping me open season 2 of Enlightened Omnivore podcast. We'll be hearing a lot of incredible voices, but I'm super excited that you and I got to sit down today, and I'm looking forward to the next time you come and join us and tell us some more about what you're doing.
Oh yeah, man. I appreciate it, man. Keep building the community.
All right, man. Thank you so much, Michael. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
And that wraps up another episode of Enlightened Omnivore. A special thanks to all my subscribers for listening in this week. You can all read more about everything omnivorous on my weekly Substack newsletter found at enlightenedomnivore.substack.com. Today's episode of Enlightened Omnivore was brought to you by Herd and Grace, your trusted source for world-class, responsibly raised meats from Australia, Spain, and beyond. Taste the difference in every cut and get 15% off your first order when you use the code OMNIVORE15.